Hello, everyone, and welcome to lesson number 3. And we're definitely glad that you are here. This is lesson number 3, and the topic is arithmetic sequence. Arithmetic sequence. Let's begin. So, what is an arithmetic sequence? An arithmetic sequence is a sequence where the difference between one term and the next is always a constant. That's a specific number that we call d. So, let's consider this sequence. 4, 9, 14, 4, 9, 14, and 19. And we have a missing number. So is this sequence an arithmetic sequence or not? Well, in order for it to be an arithmetic sequence, when we take the difference of 4 and 9, we must get a constant, a specific number. And when we take the difference of 9 and 14, we must get the same constant, that specific number. And when we take the difference of 14 and 19, we're supposed to get a specific number. So it must be the same. So let's consider 9 and 14. 9 minus 4, let's consider 9 and 4. 9 minus 4 is 5. So when we subtract 9 and 4, we get 5. That's a specific number. Let's look at 14 and 9. When we do 9 and 14, or 14 and 9, 14 minus 9, when we subtract them, when we find their difference, we get 5. So the difference of 14 and 9 is 5. That's the same number. Next, let's consider 19 and 14. That's these two numbers. When we do 19 and 14, the difference is 5. Notice that in each case, when we do the difference of these numbers, we get 5, a specific number, a constant. And we call that constant d. So the common difference, d, is 5. A next feature of arithmetic sequences is that to get the next term, you just have to add the constant to the previous term. So that means in order for us to get this missing number, we just have to add 19 plus d, which is 5. So that means that in order for us to get this next term, we're just going to say 19 plus 5, and 19 plus 5 is 24. And so that's how we're going to get this missing number. So this right here is an arithmetic sequence, and we can continue the sequence just by adding 5 each time. Next, let's consider the general formula for arithmetic sequence. The general formula for an arithmetic sequence is x sub n, which is equal to a plus d. Remember, d is the common difference. Open bracket n minus 1. So let's look at this arithmetic sequence. Now, when we say a is the first term. So a is going to be the first term in the sequence. And when we say d is that common difference. And we just saw in the previous slide that the common difference in this particular sequence is 5. So we know a is 4, that's our first term in the sequence, and we know d is 5, that's our common difference. So let's find the rest of the numbers in the sequence. So based on this general formula, we know a is 4, we know d is 5. Now, what is n? Well, n is the first term that n in this case is the first term that we're looking at. So whatever term that we're looking at, that's what n going to be. So when we're looking at the second term, n is going to be 2. When we're looking at the third term, n is going to be 3. We're looking at the fourth term, n is going to be 4. So n is so n in this case, the same n represents which term that we are on, and x sub n is the nth term. Okay, so in this case, we're looking at the first term. We're trying to figure out what is going to be the first term. Well, all we're going to do is say x sub 1 is equal to 4, which is a is equal to 4. D is 5. D is 5. That's our common difference. And n, remember, n is 1 because we are dealing with the first term. The first term. And we always subtract by 1 in this general formula. And so that means we have 4 plus 5, open bracket, 1 minus 1, which is going to give us 4. And the reason it gives us 4 is because 1 minus 1, that gives us 0. So that's 0. And 0 multiplied by 5, well, 0 multiplied by 5 is still 0. So the answer here is going to just be 4. So our first term is 4. So n is equal to 1. So for x sub 1, right, x sub 1 is 4. And in this case, n is equal to 1. For this one, n is equal to 2 because that's our second term. And in this case, n is equal to 3 because that's our third term. And in this case, n is equal to 4 because that's our fourth term. So it's our n is equal to 4. And in this case, n is equal to 5 because this is our fifth term. So this term is x sub 1, right? This is x sub 2, right? which corresponds to n is equal to 2. This is x sub 3, which corresponds to n is equal to 3. This is x sub 4, or you can say x4, which corresponds to n is equal to 4. And this is x sub 5, which corresponds to n is equal to 5. So let's find the rest of these numbers. We already know the actual sequence, but we're just verifying the formula. So let's look at x sub 2. Remember, x2 is our second term, right? So n is 2 in this case. So n is 2. So we're going to put 2 for here because n is 2. So we have 2 here. We already know that 4 is our first term. 4 is A is the first term. And then D stays the same. That's going to be 5, right? So when we do 4 plus 5, open bracket, 2 minus 1, that gives us 9. Why? Because 2 minus 1, well, 2 minus 1 is 1. And then 5 times 1 is 5. And then if you add 5 plus 4, you get 9. So the x sub 2 is 9. So our formula makes sense so far. Now let's look at x sub 3, right? That's the third term. Remember, in this case, n is equal to 3. So 3 here and 3 here because n is equal to 3. Okay, and a is the first term. We don't change that. That's the first number in our sequence. And d is 5. We don't change that. That's the common difference. So we have 4 plus 5, open bracket, 3 minus 1, which gives us 14. And it's 14 because 3 minus 1 is 2, and 2 times 5 is 10, and 10 plus 4 is 14. So x sub 3 is 14, just like how we have it here. Next, let's consider x sub 4. Well, for x sub 4, n is equal to what? N is equal to 4. So n is equal to 4 in this case. We know that 4 is A, that doesn't change. 5 is D, that doesn't change. Okay, and we have 4 minus 1. Why is it 4 minus 1? Because it's n minus 1. All right, so 4 minus 1 is going to be 3, and 3 times 5, 3 times 5 is 15, and 15 plus 4 is 19. So x sub 4 is definitely 19, just like how we have in our sequence. Next, let's look at x sub 5. Well, remember, 5 in this case, n is 5. So n is 5, and n is 5 right here. So we're going to put 5 here. And we have 5 minus 1. So 5 minus 1. And we have 5 on the outside because the common difference D is 5, and 4 doesn't change. That simply doesn't change because that's the first term, A. And that's in our formula, A doesn't change. So we have 4 plus 5, open bracket, 5 minus 1, which is 24. Why? Because 5 minus 1, well, 5 minus 1 is 4, and 4 multiplied by 5 is 20, and 20 plus 4, well, 20 plus 4 is 24. And so x of 5 is 24. And so we could definitely use this formula, this general formula, for our arithmetic sequence. So an arithmetic sequence is going to be a sequence where we have a common difference D. And we could find that common difference D by simply subtracting the first term with the second term with the third term, and so on. And so this brings us to the end of our arithmetic sequence. Hopefully you learned something, and I'll see y'all on the next video. Take care, everyone.